So we are out in the shop today at Casper Ag Solutions, and we're going to follow up our planter tune-up video with something a little bit more specific and talk about your meters. I got behind me here a Precision Planting Meter Max Ultra test stand, and I think I've been a precision dealer for maybe 13 years, 15 years, something like that. Dang long time. And back in the day, to be a dealer, you had to buy one of these. So I think we added it up. I think in the last however many years, I've run about 5,000 meters through this stand. And I could tell you things that I know for sure, and I could tell you things that just aren't true and things that are true. But it's that time of year, and when you have the economics that we have right now, where maybe the market prices aren't great, inflation's really hard, there's not a lot of guys buying a lot of new gizmos and gadgets. Perfectly understandable, no problem. But when those years come around, it's a good time to get back to basics. I like to say back to Lukenbach, Texas, where you start talking about your chains, your bearings, your hex shafts, your meters, meter performance, meter testing, your drive lines, your tires, all those fundamental things. That's why we made the planter tune-up video. There's no excuse to not be ready. You don't have to spend a ton of money to be as ready as you can be with the planter that you have, right? And that's the world we're living in right now, because none of us can really afford the gizmos and gadgets to make us go better and faster, but none of us can afford downtime and mistakes. The last thing you want is to have Mother Nature doing rain. You get a window of opportunity to go, and something's not right with your meters, and you miss that day, and it rains tomorrow. I've seen it happen. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this can and can't do, the things you need to look at with whatever type of planter you're running. And hopefully you gain a little bit from it. We're running meters from now through at least tax day. I've had people roll in on April 25th. Hey, can you run my meters? Yeah, but earlier is gooder. Always keep that in mind. So with that, let's see if we can get started. So as you know, this is a finger meter. This is a finger pickup. Now this has the Precision Planting components already installed. You got the Pop Max backing plate, you got the Precision finger set, you've got the Precision belt. You can see it's cupped a little bit there. And you've got skip stop on the back. Now, do you have to have these components to have a good finger meter? No, but it does make a difference. If you have a blue planter and just straight up blue planter components in your finger meters, there's not a whole lot you can do other than maybe just blow them out and hope they're right, because there's just not a lot of adjustment. But in terms of finger meters, let's talk about what we want to go through. Number one, take these things out, blow the heck out of them. Get your compressor, just blow the snot out of them. Get them as clean as possible. You're probably running some type of talc or graphite or something like that. Get that all cleaned out. Make sure everything's good to go. The other thing we're going to want to inspect is that our belt is installed correctly, because you can see here the Precision belt that's cupped a little bit to try to get that seed to fall down so that we have a straight drop straight down the seed tube, so we get a true spacing from what our meter is able to perform. You can pop off this stop, just inspect that cushion, but you got to run a heck of a lot of acres before that cushion's going to go bad. I've seen it, but it's hard to do. As far as your adjustable brush goes, some guys run them and they keep that little 90-degree arm in there full time. Some guys don't. I don't care. It's up to you. But if you stored it over the winter with the finger under the brush, and you see how we've got a belt sticking its tongue out at us, you've got that. If we move him over to where that brush doesn't have anything underneath of it, there's nothing showing down below. We'll just scooch him just a millimeter. See what I'm talking about? For the price of everything that you're investing in this corn crop, a brush is maybe 10 bucks, whatever it is, I don't know. Just put a new brush in there. It's worth it. If you don't have these components, I'd encourage you to consider it if you're going to be keeping this finger planter for a long time. You guys know that you got finger meters, you need a certain size seed, and you have to go a certain speed. You can't just throw any seed you want in there and go 7 miles an hour. It's not going to work, but that's okay. Because if you get a good seed size, one that your finger meter can handle, you're able to plant at a good consistent speed somewhere in that 4.5 to 5 miles an hour. you can have a really stand. There's no reason you can't. So with that, we're gonna show you one more thing here and then put it on the stand. If you pull your fingers, unbolt them, pull your finger set off the meter, you wanna inspect on the inside, make sure these fingers aren't rubbed too much, rubbed flat on the inside here. That's where they're rubbing up against that backing plate. Obviously make sure your springs are good condition. Blow the heck out of this. Could have a lot of graphite and talc up in there. Once you're sure that everything's good, go put this back in, push it up against the backing plate, but keep moving it around until you're sure that she's up snug on the backing plate, right? So now we got it. There you go. Did you hear that click? Now we got it. We're pushing it hard against. So we take our nut, tighten that nut back down. Now, once we touch, what I like to do and what I was taught is move it half a flat. This is a flat. You see how we just marked out the corner and the corner? Now we move this nut about a half a flat and then twist it again. Make sure we're good and snug and half a flat. There's people that'll say, well, you need 1.21 gigawatts of torque on this nut to maintain optimum. Baloney. I've seen meters that pulled harder than heck. I've seen guys that were spun free by hand. It doesn't matter. You'd be surprised the amount of force that's on that hex shaft and chain coming through. So that's something I like to do. Make sure my fingers are good and make sure it's tight. You can still move this a little tighter or looser if you need to on the test stand, but that's a good place to start and where you want to be. So now we're on the test stand and we're set at 4.5 miles an hour at about 33,000 for a population. Let's see what we got here and we'll kind of stop it short. We'll just run it up to 500 seeds and then stop it. 98.8. Our target population 32.7 when we were shooting for 33. On a finger meter, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, if I can get above 98% on the test stand, I'm thrilled because I kind of have a mixed pish-posh of seed. I don't have all perfectly sized seed as well. I can adjust my brush a little bit more and dial it in, but what this is telling me is this is one healthy meter. It's ready to rock and roll. I can get it to 99% or more, but you're gonna spend a lot of money to get there. And I think for finger meters and what you're doing, this is a really healthy finger meter. And what we're able to see down here too is which finger of the 12 is giving us troubles. And you saw the icons moving across. What you're looking for is consistency, because if there's a consistent blip, 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 you might have a finger that's acting up in particular. You can trace that down and get that fixed. If you're running blue fingers, not a lot you can do, but make sure they're clean, make sure they're tight, make sure they're not too fatigued and wore down. Sometimes blue meters, they will warp. So back here, this area, it will warp, and I see it on the test stand. It wants to do this really bad. It happens. All you can really do is update meters. For meters like this with precision components, lots of things you can do to fix, upgrade, replace, tweak it, make it right. So finger meters can do a great job, but they need a little bit more babysitting. Nothing wrong with that. It's what we do every single year. So got any questions, reach out. We'll do the best we can for you. A lot of times folks don't believe me that you're dropping 13 seeds per second at normal speed, at normal population, and that's what we're doing here. We're planting at 5 miles an hour at about 33,000. We're running 18 inches of vac, thereabouts, right in there. And I put a new extractor in, and you can see testing pretty good. Kind of thought this one would, pretty clean. Like I said, brushes, seals, everything was in good shape. And let's see how we finish out here. So in 500 seeds, one skip, one multiple. And that's how VSet should be. Vacuum was 18. We're at 5 miles an hour at 33,000 population. Hammer down, slam dunk. These are good shape. Just blow them out, clean them up, put new extractors in, and this guy's ready to plant. I got those, got 16 more showing up tomorrow. So it's just that time of year. But that's what you do when you're running VSets. They're a little bit older technology, but man, they still work really good. So the next meter we want to talk about is the VSet meter. Every seed, every time. That's what VSet stands for. And when that first came out, that was a big deal in performance because that took the guesswork out of your vac planter, completely out of play. You set your vac to 18 inches and rock and roll. And they still perform great. Lots and lots of VSets out on the market. I got no problem with them. If you're planting corn on your E-sets, just make sure you're there at 18 inches of vac and you'll be fine. But when we get a E-set meter in, first thing we do is we want to look at the cover. And you can see here the cover is the seal on the inside. So two things I'm looking for on this seal. Number one, do we have any cracks, tears, wear and tear on it? Are we wearing thin in any place? And number two, over time, this rubber can get pretty stiff. You want the rubber to be soft and pliable so that it can do its job. And believe me, if this seal's not doing its job, you will notice on your 2020. It's gonna show up pretty quick. So this one looks pretty good. I've got really no worries on this one. No rips, tears, cracks, and pretty pliable for the rubber on the seal. So I'm not too worried about this. This one's gonna be fine. Next thing we do, we're gonna take this disc out. Looking at it, everything looks fine, everything's in place, but the big thing I look at on these discs is we wanna make sure that our cells are round and not ovaled. As you know, corn can be super abrasive, and it takes a lot of corn and a lot of acres and a lot of years to wear through this and make these round cells oval, but I've seen it. It absolutely can happen. But this one, I'm not worried about this one at all. Sometimes you'll see a line between the cells where that shark's tooth on that extractor rubs through. I've never seen that have anything to do with performance, so I never worry about that. But this disc looks pretty good. Next thing we're gonna look at is inside the guts of it itself. So number one, these brushes look pretty good. They're standing straight up, pretty firm, good integrity of the bristles. I think these brushes, they're good to go. Don't need any changes there. Your hub seal, good. Same thing we're looking for. No cracks, no rips, no tears, nice and pliable. Paper clip is in place, and your singulator up top here, it's floating because it's in the corn planting position, normal. And you can see here on your singulator, there's lots of meat on your foot pads, so to speak. Now I know that E-sets have a check gauge, and I've done it, and they're like, well, if it's this much showing on the singulator to the cell, you can sand it down and grind it down a little bit. And I've done all that. It's taken an extraordinary amount of time to get each one right. And long story short, you were on heaven's doorstep anyhow with that piece. So if I get an E-set on the test stand and it's not doing what it should, which is 99% or better automatically, then I'll swap out the singulator and boom, performance goes right up to 99%. So you do it your way. I understand everyone wants to save a little bit of money, but for what I've seen, if they get down that far, they really owe you nothing. Just replace the singulator, and I encourage guys, if you replace the singulator, take a look at that disc, replace them both at the same time because they've worn down together at the same time. So having said that, the other thing you want to look at down here is your extractor. Now, this extractor here is worn out, and I'm going to try to show you why. Here's a brand new extractor, and hopefully you're going to be able to see this. But you see this notch? See that notch right there? So as time goes on and this flat area wears down, when it wears down to that notch, it's worn out. It's not doing its job. A lot of people think they want to look at that shark's tooth on the end, but it's not. So like this one here, I don't know how well you can see it, but that bugger is worn out. It's not able to effectively do its job. So that's the insides and outs of an E-set meter. Everything else looks good. No cracks, no runs, no hits, no errors. So we're going to put this together here. We're going to snap this disc in, because the other thing you want to look at is down here. We want about a business card's worth of gap down on this bottom end here. I have seen this where the disc was too stiff and the disc was rubbing on the housing. That will impact performance. So hopefully you can see that to where we want about a business card or a little bit more of gap between the disc and the housing when she's clicked and locked into place. So with that, let's try to put this on the test stand and see what we got. So for the last part of our meter training YouTube video here, we're going to talk about VSet. V as in Victor, as in direction and magnitude. First thing we're going to want to do is get your hopper. If they bring them in, get your hoppers in. These are very dirty. This is a very dirty hopper. We don't like to see this. So we get them in, clean them out, clean them up, because these things need to breathe in order to work correctly. So we want to clean them up, make sure the vents are good, make sure they're breathing, cracks, all that kind of happy stuff. When we get to the housing, it's similar to E-set.
However, the difference is VSet was built to fit inside of the existing John Deere seed meter. VSet has its own meter with its own guts. So that's why the performance on the VSets are that much better. So we're going to try to show you here, this meter, it's got the soybean singulator in it, and make sure it's floating on that spring properly. Hopefully you can see that up there, right? See how it's floating? This one wasn't when I opened it up, so that's an aha moment. The brushes here seem pretty good, pretty firm. They're a little bit frayed, but they'll make it this year. But next year, these brushes are gonna have to go. And then, just like the other vac meters, we're gonna wanna look at our seals. I cannot emphasize enough on VSets, especially this one. VSet Classic was the original. VSet 2 meters are what we use on SpeedTube. And with him running this 56-hole precision soybean disc, he's running 25 to 30 inches of vac. Well, if you're running that much vac, you need to make sure that all of your seals are ready to rock and roll. This one looks really good, a little dirty, but looks really good. And then we've got our knockout wheel here on the bottom. We want to make sure our knockout wheel's good, make sure that spring underneath is in pretty good condition. This one is. And then on our disc, again, just like VSet, make sure that our cells are in good condition, not ovaled out, honed out. Otherwise, you can run the other disc, which has 2 rows of cells on it. This is a VSet Classic disc. Hard to wear down soybean discs, but it can happen. It's worth the inspection. So that's just a quick physical run through of what we look at when we bring in VSet meters. So for SpeedTubes, the main thing we want to do is we want to pop this cover off first of all. Just take a look at generally structural integrity. Sometimes you're going to have some wear on the outside here. That's not uncommon. We just don't want it to get out of control. And as you can see here, this one needs to go on Mobile Max and get tested. Make sure it's able to handle the pull and the strain. But check that wear on the outside. Then on the inside here, on the bottom, you can see a metal strip. Hopefully you can see that. Just make sure there's enough meat on the bone there and that we've got some structural integrity down on the bottom. For the SpeedTube itself, couple things. Big wheel and small wheel here. I call them rubber, they're not exactly rubber. But I just tell folks, for the amount of acres you're putting through and you've gone this far to get SpeedTube, you obviously have some ground you need to cover. Just swap them out. They're $5, $6, $7 a piece, I don't know, whatever. Just change them out. Keep your good ones in a Ziploc bag. You never know when you're gonna get something stuck in there and it's gonna keep spinning and wear it down. You'll know on your monitor that you got something going on. You get back there and look, you just take a good used one out of the bag, put it in, keep going. But for the importance of these and as much business is going through them, make sure that these are in top-notch quality. Same with your belt. Get your belt out, check your flashing. There's a little cheat sheet here. You might not be able to see it, but inside your SpeedTube, it tells you what your flashing should look like, which way it should be pointing. Double check that, make sure that's good. You've got a little pulley here on the bottom, a little slack adjuster. And this pulley on the bottom has a groove in the middle of it. Make sure that that groove hasn't been worn down over time. We want to keep everything true and doing the things it's supposed to be doing. Your seed tube sensor here, make sure that's, again, structural integrity is good. Make sure it's clean and get it on the Mobile Max. Put some stress on it, see what it's got. Simple stuff, but like everything else, we need to make sure that we're doing it so that we're ready to rock and roll. Because once we start planting, we don't want to stop. We're back to our test stand. And as you can tell, the guts of it are the same as when we were running VSets and finger meters. The difference now, though, is we've attached our SpeedTube brackets, put a SpeedTube in there, and there's that same VSet 2 meter that we just opened up and showed you the guts and how to check those out. And we've connected our Mobile Max, I call it a bomb box, powered by, I think it's 1.21 gigawatts underneath there, with a flux capacitor. But essentially what this does, whether I'm here in the shop or whether I'm in the field with a planter, I can load test and do diagnostics individually without having to break everything apart, break everything down. And it allows me to run SpeedTubes and meters here on the test stand. And what you're looking for a bunch of stuff. You're looking for all the regular stuff, and I don't know how well you can see it, but you get into this one here, we can see supply volts is good. We're not running it, so there's no duty cycle. Same with your V drive. Supply volts is good. We don't have any drive amps right now, no duty cycle, but when we run it, we can tell those things. It's a tool that I'm learning more about, and I'm pretty excited to have it and use it because nobody can afford downtime. And this is another tool that's going to help me help you avoid downtime. But if you've got your speed tubes, by all means, we can run them, we can check them out, make sure you're ready to rock and roll. So in conclusion, we're making this video. It's about the middle of February. From now till maybe tax day, I run meters on the test stand. Sooner is gooder. I know it's the kind of year where you're like, gosh, I don't want to spend money if I don't have to, but it's also a year where you can't afford mistakes. And who knows what the weather's going to do? Nobody knows. Are we going to have a big planting window, or are we going to have a real small delayed planting window? Nobody knows. But what I do know is you can be ready. And part of being ready is get your meters in, let's get them opened up, cleaned out, check them out, make sure they're ready to rock. I have lots of customers that will say, you know, Ed, I run my meters every other year. I got no problem with that, I get that. What's funny is when I go, who else runs your meters? And they're like, well, nobody does, just you do, Ed. I said, okay. I says, you haven't run your meters in 4 years. Really, time flies. So don't be afraid to pull them out of the planter early, get them down here, let's get them checked out. Make sure you're ready to rock. Thanks, we'll talk to you soon.